Rise and shine.
Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Baldini, and today I want to talk to you about America. Our country is the greatest country in the world. There's no doubt about that. That, and that's something you're not going to hear. America is a great country. You're not going to hear that from the left. Why? Because it doesn't fit their progressive agenda. Our country is strong, but we're dealing with we're suffering from bad politicians, corrupt media, and greedy Wall Street bankers. And that's what it comes down to. These people are seeking money. These three groups that I just mentioned have an alliance. They're allied with each other, whether they realize it or not. Whether the individuals at work within the system, within these three groups, know it or not, they are allied together, and they're allied against the American people. Bad politicians, they are in the process of allowing corrupt elections. And this, to be clear, this is not just about President Trump and the November election. This is about the obvious problems that we've had with our election process for years. And in most cases, when you see something broke, you would hope that politicians, the people we hire to represent us, would do something to fix it. They don't. You would hope that the bureaucrats who we pay in order to hold their jobs would do something to fix it. Because there's clearly clear evidence, despite what the corrupt media wants to tell you on the left, that there isn't. There is clear evidence that there's something wrong with our election process. And I don't mean the electoral college, I mean the way the votes are being taken. That we have corruption within the system, and we have corruption within our voting machines, and we have corruption spread throughout the system around the entire country. Yet it's being ignored by the politicians and being ignored by the bureaucrats within the electoral system. Why? That's a great question. Why? Because it suits their needs to do this. And when I say bad politicians, let me backstep first. Bad politicians from both parties. Not just, I'm not, This is not an attack just on Democrats. This is an attack on the politicians who are in Washington and around the country who are more interested in protecting their own skin and more commonly known as the establishment politicians. They want to stay in power. They want to protect their power. They're more interested in protecting that than our electoral system. So the bad politicians and the bureaucrats who have a vested interest, they have this vested interest to ignore this election. So don't think you're going to see anytime soon them turning over things or doing their due diligence to find out what's going on. The media too. You're not going to see them turning over stones to try to find clues. They're not going to look for clues. They're going to ignore them and act like they're not there, because that's what they do when they don't want to follow a story. There's lots of evidence out there to prove that there's something wrong. We have affidavits from people. We have videos that are now out there. We see clear evidence of wrongdoing, but it's not going to be followed. It's not going to be picked up by the corrupt media, and there's a couple of reasons why. First, the media is owned by corporations, and it's if you look at all of this, if you pull back from the politicians and the media, and you look at Wall Street has deep financial ties with other countries, most notably China. And it's in China's best interest to have an administration that's friendly to China, whether no matter which party it is. To them, to China, it doesn't matter. They've been able to work things out with both parties. And find a solution to whatever issue develops. They've been able to buy their way out of trouble. And we've seen this clearly throughout time. So it's not a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise that we see the Wall Street bankers with deep ties to China throwing in lots of money. They threw in a lot of money in this campaign to encourage the Democratic Party, which has, and especially the Bidens, who have so much investment in China and so many deep ties to the Chicoms. We know that the Chicoms can have used a lot of money to buy their way into America. They've seek to control a number of things. Our culture, they've pressured politicians directly and indirectly. They've worked with different groups such as Black Lives Matter and I think it's Liberty Road and a couple other groups that are leftist groups, that are Marxist groups, that have ties and want to be part of the Chi-Com's new order. We know this from deep research from real news or outlets such as Epic Times. We know that there's things out there that are dirty about what's going on with the Chi-Coms. We know that they're dirty in this, and we know that the Wall Streeters are connected to this because it's in their best interest to help the Chi-Coms. So and who owns the media? Really, ultimately, who owns the media? Corporations on Wall Street. Every big corporation, every news outlet, most major news outlets are owned by several corporations. So it's in their best interest to be bought and paid for. So consciously or unconsciously, whether the minions on the front lines, those who are the actual reporters you see on the TV screen, whether they're the ones writing the stories in the newspaper, whether consciously or unconsciously, they are being manipulated and being encouraged to spread this news how evil Trump is, how bad Trump is, and how bad things are going to be. And there's no evidence, and we can't overturn the election. All that is coming from a corporate media and a group of minions who think, ultimately inside them, they think they're doing the right thing by pushing the agenda of the media outlets, of the big corporations. They think they're doing it because it feels good, and ultimately that's the inner part of them that makes them feel good. So let's also make this clear. There's no principle in this movement against President Trump. There's no principle. There's no principle that you can stand on in hiding information. If if it's right or wrong, if there's real allegations or not allegations, when you have affidavits, signed affidavits from American citizens who are willing to go on record, not one or two, dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of affidavits that say they saw corruption, that's something to stand up and take notice. That should be reported on, and not in a negative way, not in a biased way, but in an unfiltered manner. In other words, here's the information you as a consumer decide. They don't want that. The corporate media can't have that because if you are given the unvarnished truth, you might be and you will be completely shocked and dismayed at the corruption within our system and how bad and unsafe our electoral process is. Now, I'm not trying to sow doubt. I'm trying to sow truth because this is the information that's out there. You're not getting it. You're not getting it in any other manner. So you might as well get it from me. They know they do it. They know it or not. It's immaterial whether they know they're doing it or not. It's immaterial because it's all comes down to consciously or unconsciously. Like I said before, it all comes down to the corporate media overlords making the call on what's going to be covered in that news cycle. So I want you to be aware of that. Again, there's no principle. There's no principles in this movement against President Trump and against looking into the election because a principle would require them to be able to say, maybe there's something wrong here, reviewing things to make sure they're okay and good are good things. See, the bureaucrats don't want to say that there's something wrong because if they do, that means they screwed up. They're the defendants in this trial. They're the ones who are on trial. And if they sit there and say there was something wrong, they're going to look bad. Their job's going to be at risk. Their entire system is going to have to be revamped and looked through. And no one likes close scrutiny. You think about it. Would you really want somebody to closely scrutinize how you're doing your job? No, because they'll pick it apart. They'll pick apart, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Why is this being done? Then you have to answer all these questions like you're on trial, which you are in this case if you're one of those bureaucrats. You should be on trial. Why did we allow these things to happen? Why do we have unsafe machines? Why are these machines hooked up to the internet? Do they have any connection beyond just being a simple standard standalone machine? So I want to make sure you understand that this unprincipled movement against President Trump's demand to re-examine this election, and to be clear, this isn't about just the November election of 2020. This is about every election moving forward. if we can't have legitimate elections, then we be turned into a banana republic. That's not what we want to be. You can't just sit there and say all our elections are fair and safe when you haven't examined it, when there's really no checks and balances. In this, and I hate using this word, but in this last election cycle, there's been unprecedented, that's the word I hate, unprecedented amount of changing of the rules, lack of oversight, a lack of investigation. And I mean that leading up to the election, not just the election. The rules have been changed, they've been altered, and they've used different excuses to do that. But ultimately, what it comes down to is if you don't have an election that's safeguarded by having the rules followed and by having good solid checks, every ballot getting checked, every signature being put on in every ballot, and I know that every person gets a vote and had a vote and that vote was legit. If you can't have that, then you don't have safe elections. So, ladies and gentlemen, keep that in mind going forward. Make sure you look into what is being said on the left as well, because you can be sure if they're telling you that if there's nothing wrong, that we got a deep, bad problem. So, God bless. Take care of yourself. Hope to see you soon in the the media overlord, corporate media overlord free world that we're going to try to make together. God bless and take care.